Thank you for joining the ESBC Financial and Betting Podcast. Every meeting has to have a purpose and an outcome. The purpose is to make me money. That's the purpose of the podcast. We're not like these lying athletes that say, oh, I went there to be closer to my family, to be in alignment with the universe. No, this is to make me money, all right? The second purpose of the podcast is to make you money. We don't just give you a fish. We teach you how to fish. We use business and financial concepts. Since I'm an MBA, I have securities licenses, I have to be a fiduciary. What we do is we teach you decision science, technical and fundamental analysis, so you can pick games, right? The third object of the podcast is to educate you on basic mental health. Mental health first aid kit. My wife's a psychotherapist, licensed in California, so we all have to have a little bit of knowledge, especially these days with the pandemic and everything else going on. Now, we have Hollywood royalty, a man that I've been listening to pretty much my whole life. My generation grew up watching his dad, who was ridiculously funny on the Burnett Show and McHale's Navy without cursing. Imagine that. You know, he could get his point across and make you laugh without cursing. All right. And his son gave me belly laughs in my car coming off getting pissed at business meetings. He walked me off the ledge in my car, you know, wondering what did Jesse Jackson say. Yeah. He kind of messed up the George Floyd funeral because here comes Jesse Jackson. I'm like, all right, Tim Conway Jr. has new material. All right. He's a 2016 Marconi winner. And man, this is one of those things where, you know, he barely knows me, but I've been listening to him my whole life. I feel like I know him. But we got to conduct the interview Raider Jim Martinez, who has made me money the last 4 years with his Raider knowledge, and last year got me on a 7-game winning streak with the Miami Dolphins.
Wow. We
finished pre-pandemic 41-6 college basketball as Raider Jim started dropping some knowledge there. We encourage you to listen to all the old podcasts because they're more valuable, the old ones, than the new ones because they're educational. You're not worried about the outcome. All right? So without further ado, let's give it to Raider Jim Martinez, man. How you doing, brother?
Thank you very much, Josh. Tim Conway Jr., thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I know it's a work day for you, so we are going to keep this concise, keep it flowing, hopefully entertaining, engaging, and you'll even want to come back and join us during the racing season.
By the way, it sounds the opposite of that. It sounds like it's going to be a long afternoon.
That's true.
Hey, when you guys do your podcast, do you ever go back into old podcasts and change like the shitty picks you made?
No.
Because we're legit. We're making so much money. We want to give people a good experience versus all the chysters are out there.
No, you got to go back.
Shit. You can curse on this here. We have the FTC stuff.
Let's say you liked the Bears over the Bengals, right? And then the Bengals came in and wiped them out. Just go back in the podcast and change it.
Right? Well, I can't, man. Remember, I have securities licenses. That would be a fiduciary. I would get rated, you know.
When they find out you're fiduciary, when they find out you're, you know, this guy who is, you know, handling tons of money, and you also do sports picks, do people freak out?
No, as long as I don't make any money, as long as you don't give me money for the picks, we're good.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so as long as you do it for free. All right, this is great. So, you know what? I'm the world's biggest loser, right? I literally, I couldn't pick the first place horse in a duo. I mean, in a duel. I'm the absolute, I'll tell you what kind of luck I have. There was a horse that Shoemaker was on, you know, way back in the 1970s. And my buddy and I went to Santa Anita. We, you know, stole money out of my mom's purse, I think a $20 bill. We took the RTD to Santa Anita, and we put a $20 bill on this horse to win. And that was a lot of money, you know, back then in the 70s. You know, back then we'd just make dollar bets or $2 bets. And this horse went off at 18-1. It comes down the stretch, and it's winning by 30 lengths. I'm not kidding you, by 30 lengths. It gets within 10 lengths. I mean, we're, you know, hugging and high-fiving. You know, we're about to make a score. This thing does a cartwheel about 50 feet before the finishing line and is dead before the next horse wins. That's the kind of luck that I have. But I will say that, you know, there's nothing better than having money on a race when your horse is turning the final turn and into the stretch, and you have money and you got a shot at winning the race. It doesn't matter how much money or how little or how much money you have on that horse. And you pick that winner, you feel like you're smarter than everybody else. You feel like
true.
You know, you're better than everybody else for a split second, and then you realize that, you know, you're just the bigger asshole than that guy next door. But I will say that about 90% of what I say on KFI and on the air comes from people at the racetrack. I mean, you cannot be a racetrack fan without being a great storyteller. Every single guy who goes to the racetrack can tell you, 100 stories, and every one of them is, funnier than the next.
Well, people are going to think this is all scripted and staged, because if I look down at my notes, you're leading me right into a couple things. One of them was, I was hoping we'd get to the point where I could share. Back in 1980, I was newly married, had a kid on the way, took the lady to the racetrack. I kid you not, I won 7 races in a row.
Wow.
Now, 7 in a row, and like you say, but we're talking $1, $2. I got ballsy and bet $5. Tim, by the end of the 7th race, I had enough money to buy a crib and a changing table. So I'm like, baby, we got to go. I put the money in my pocket, and this guy that had been sitting next to me says, don't leave, you're hot. I'm going to give you a tip. I said, what's the tip? And you'll appreciate this. The 8th race at Del Mar is always the feature. This guy says to me, the feature is a $100,000 race. Shoemaker's riding. You put $20 on him, you're going to walk away with a couple $100. I can't do it, man. I got to buy a crib and a changing table. By the time we got to the car, race was over. Shoemaker had crossed. My money was in my pocket. I didn't win another effing dime, but there it was. This guy was just watching me, and he says, you kind of know what you're doing, so I'm going to go ahead and reward you with a tip, but hey, it is what it is. But yeah, Shoemaker, I got to see Shoemaker, and that was always a treat when I got to see him ride.
Here's a better ending to that story. So the guy gives me the tip, and by the time I get to the car, not only am I broke, but we had to change the kid on the carpet for the first 3 years of my life. But look, you're right. There's nothing like horse racing. Gambling is great. Blackjack is great when the table gets hot. Craps is pretty cool as well. But there's nothing like horse racing. And I just wish that more guys stood up to their wives and said, no, I'm not taking our son on this, on tour on basketball or volleyball or baseball. He's not joining a team where we're traveling all over the United States. He's going with me to the racetrack, and I'm going to teach him about real life. But yet they didn't. We missed two or three generations of kids that got into traveling sports teams and didn't go to the track. And now I can ask you, Josh, and you probably know this, and I'll guess without both of you, without knowing. The first day we met,
right? I'm
going to say it was dad, grandfather, or uncle. Only one of three people that took you to the track the first time. Who was it?
Uncle.
Jimmy.
Dad.
Okay, boom. Nail both of them.
There it is.
Well, I'm not 41-6. I'm 2-0. But the uncles and grandfathers and dads, they don't take their kids anymore. They for some reason.
And the trick is, when you win betting money, you got to give money to the wife. My wife has not bought gasoline without it being betting money since 2011, or an expensive rest or purse or anything like that.
I used to go to a bar in right near Hollywood Park and handicap right before the races. And it was a small little Mexican restaurant, and I knew everybody there. I knew the waiters, I knew the bus boys, the guy who owned it, the bartender, and they always asked me, for tips. But I never gave any tips because, these guys work so hard for their money. I didn't want to give them a tip, and then they blow it, and I can't go back there anymore, right? Because they're all pissed. So they keep asking me, come on, Tim, what's one tip? And I finally said, okay. I said, I like this horse. It's 23 to 1, but don't put life-changing money on it, right? Just touch it a little. So an hour later, they bumped credit cards. They took out, like, you know, they had a HELOC on it. They had borrowed money from their cousin. They took money out of the drawer. I mean, they put literally like $6,000 on this horse, enough to bring the odds down. I think it came down to 16 to 1. This horse wins by 10 lengths. And now all of a sudden I'm the hero of this bar, right?
No
Everybody,
shit.
I come in, I can't buy any drinks. There's confetti going around. All these guys feel wealthy. So now they keep banging on me for another tip. They're like, hey, obviously you know what's going on. Give us another tip. And I said, that's a once in a lifetime deal. I can't give you another one. And I got to the point where I couldn't go back there anymore because they just kept, you know, hounding me and saying, no, I know you know what's going on. I know it's fixed. You know what's happening. You're an asshole for not giving us, you know. And so I said to my dad, I said, how do I get this? I said, how do I get these guys to back off? They hound me and I can't go back there anymore. And he goes, here's a great way to get them to back off. Give them another 27 to 1 shot.
That's nice. Nice.
They go on with those guys.
Now, you know, another good segue. On your show one night, and I know they've used it as a promo for your show, tell the story about when you were in grade school, 3rd or 4th grade, and you had to do a report, and you decided to do a report on the track.
Well, yeah, the only thing I could. My dad took me to the, I didn't do well in math when I was a kid. And my dad said, where he learned to do math at the racetrack, because everything is numbers. You know, everything is, you know, numbers of last race, quarter, you know, the timing of it, the distance, the betting, everything at the track is numbers, everything. How much you pay for a beer, you know, everything is dollars and cents out there. Also, you know, the morning workouts, they're all measured in time, and those numbers mean something. So I went out there, my dad spent, you know, 8 or 9 races out there showing me how to do math. And I really learned because I was interested in horse racing. That's when I got interested in horse racing. And it's all math, so you have to know how to do math. And so he taught me how to do math in one day out of Santa Anita. So I go back to Mrs. Buhai's class in 3rd grade next day. And she says, okay, it's time for speeches today. Pam, Wendy, and Tim, you're up today. I'm like, oh shit, I got nothing. I thought, you know, mine was next week or 2 weeks from now. So I look at my backpack and I have the racing program from the day before. So I take the program out, you know, I'm 10 years old. I take the program out and I show the kids, and this is, I think it's Ms. Bernstein's class. I take the program out, and on the board, I show kids how to box an exacta. You know, if you like the 3-5, go 5-3, 3-5, box the exacta, and if it comes in 3-5, either way, you win, right? So I'm done with this speech, off to the principal's office, and the principal calls my dad. Fortunately, my dad answered, not my mom, and said, you know, it's borderline child abuse to teach a 3rd grader how to box an exacta. And my dad says, let me tell you what child abuse is. He has a 3-5, it comes in 5-3, and he doesn't have it boxed. That's child abuse.
That's fantastic. That is one of my favorite stories. That is great. So, personal note, what are some of your better days you've had at the track? And I understand, you know, you're a self-proclaimed loser just like me, but we've had our moments. What's your best days at the track?
The best day I've ever had at the track was my dad and I went to Santa Anita, pouring rain out, right? And when it rains out there, it comes off the roof in like sheets. You know what it's like out there.
Right.
And pouring rain, we're out there for 8 races. The horses run in the mud, which they don't do anymore. You know, if it's real rainy, they'll shut the car down for the day. And we about break even, right? So I take my dad home, drop him off, and I said, hey, I'm going to go watch the sulkies, you know, the trotters at Hollywood Park. You want to go? And he said, no. He says, you know, I've had enough today. That's when Hollywood Park would run at night. So Santa Anita would run during the day, then they'd run the trotters at night at Hollywood Park. So I drive to Hollywood Park, and my dad, I'm in the driveway. My dad comes out and he goes, whoa, 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 whoa. He goes, hey, this pick 6 ticket, you know, the card that we had that you put through the machine and pull back out at Santa Anita, it's a $12 card. Go stick it in. Here's $12. Go stick it in Hollywood Park. Maybe it hits. And it was a pick six ticket, but you know, you put the card in and pull the card out, you get to keep the card, and then they give you the ticket. Right. So we go to Hollywood Park. I stick it in, $12. Boom. I win the pick six and win $12,000.
Jeez. Yeah.
And that's the only luck I've ever had with the pick six. Was my dad took the card out of the trash can, gave me $12, and said, "Go bet this."
That's fantastic.
That's the only luck. The only time I know you're not supposed to touch your face because of this COVID shit.
Right.
But that's the only luck I've ever had with the pick six. And a security guard walks me to my car at Hollywood Park. You know, and I give him $50 because you know, guys at that time, you know, in the 70s days, they could follow you home, right? And then all of a sudden, they got the $12,000.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
But that's the only real luck that I've ever really had with the pick six. I mean, I've won a couple, you know, 2 or 3 grand on occasion, but I am an absolute certified loser at the racetrack. Here's another quick story when it comes to luck. I was at Santa Anita with my dad. I know every story begins like that, but I was at Santa Anita with my dad, and I go to the bathroom, and I come back, and I said, "Hey, Dad, don't go in that restroom. There's a guy in there throwing up, and he's also shitting his pants, and he's yelling at a buddy who's in the stall next door, who's about to go make a bet, and he's yelling, 'Hey, go make this bet for me. Go make this bet for me,' while he's throwing up and shitting his pants, right?" So I tell that story to my dad. I said, "If you're going to use the bathroom, use the one down the way because that thing's a mess." And he says, "What was he yelling to his buddy?" He was yelling, "Go bet me this race. Go bet me this horse. Get out of here. Go bet." And my dad's reaction was, "Who did he like?" I said, "What?" He said, "Well, who did he like?" I said, "Dad, you know, you're only born with a certain amount of luck, right? He's shitting his pants and throwing up at the racetrack. I think he's run out of luck. He's exhausted his." It's like those guys that survived that U.S. Airways, you know, U.S. Airways or U.S. Airliner that ended up in the Hudson. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And all those guys survived, like 154 people or whatever it was. Captain Sully Burgers, whatever his name was. And they all survived. Never, ever go to the racetrack with one of those assholes, right? Because they've spent their luck. You're born with a certain amount of luck, and they've spent theirs. Yeah. They survived. They all survived a plane crash in New York City. It's incredible.
Yeah, their chance of winning the lottery.
It's over. It's absolutely over. So I love that story because I love the fact that 3 people, if you look this up, it's true. 3 people who were rescued from the Hudson on that plane were driven back to the hotel, changed, went to LaGuardia, and took another plane that day. That same day.
Jeez.
Wow.
That's the plane you want to be on, though, because who the hell would ever go down twice?
Right. There you go. What are the odds of that?
Yeah, exactly. They go on with those guys. But that is real Shrewitt time. You know, he's like, fuck it. You know, I'll die when I'm going to die. The guy was in a plane crash and then took an airplane the same day. How about sitting next to that guy? Listen to that story.
Jeez.
Right. Absolutely.
That's wild.
Wow. So with all the COVID, and you know, you told the story at the outset about your luck and the horse that did the somersault. On the 21st of June, they had a 4-year-old go down at the end of a race over at Santa Anita, and it made it like the 15th horse that went down for the 2020 season. Right. With the shortened season, that's like a clip of 1 horse a week. Do you think that there's really enough power behind the activists to ever really threaten horse racing in Southern California?
Well, I shouldn't say no. I should say absolutely, yeah. Because, you know, I was out at Breeders' Cup. I don't know if you guys made Breeders' Cup this year. Yep. But I was out there, and there was on the Saturday, I think Mike Willman, who runs publicity and marketing out there, I think for the racetrack, he said that they had close to 50,000. I think it was 47 and change. And the year before that, they had close to 60,000. And so there's, 50,000 people at the racetrack. There are 9 people outside protesting. And who do you think the local news talked to?
The 9 guys.
50,000 people in the track, or the 9 guys outside protesting?
Right.
It's amazing. I don't know what happened with local news, but it's now, one guy with one microphone saying that the cops kicked the shit out of him, and they'll interview him, and they'll all flock to interview him, and it's just the world's upside down.
Yeah, truly.
It really is. But gambling takes our minds off of all the craziness.
Absolutely. So did you and your dad, or did your dad, have you ever made it back to Churchill for the Derby?
I was at Churchill once in 1982, I believe. 81? No, 1982. And I remember being at Churchill. We didn't have I was going to school up in Ohio at Bowling Green State University. And we jumped in a car, 5 of us, drove down to Kentucky to watch the Derby. And we didn't have the money to go into, the turf club or the grandstand or anything. We just barely had enough money to sit in the infield. So we get in the infield and we put out a blanket out. That's the only way you can get people to stay away from you, put a blanket out. And a fight starts. These 2 assholes are fighting. And the fight rolls over our blanket and continues on. And I look down and there's a clump of hair with scalp still on it.
Nice.
Literally, it looked like a doll's head. So that's my memory of the Kentucky Derby.
Jesus.
I did business with a guy back in the late 70s, or no, it was actually the late 80s and early 90s. He was a transplant from Louisville, and he was the manager of a place called the Spindletop, which was the big club restaurant, which was right across from Churchill Downs. And as you said, as you referenced, you are going to have nothing but characters and stories if you hang around a horse track long enough.
Right.
And this guy was a character, little guy that wore a driver's cap, no sense of urgency in his life, and he knew his horses. Now, I've worked with him down in Southern California, and he would always call me, and he talked like Sheldon Leonard. And my phone would ring, I'd pick it up, and he'd go, "Is this Mr. Martinez?" And I said, "Yeah, I got one word for you in the Derby, charismatic." And I said, "Charismatic, remember the horse Charismatic?"
Okay.
Yeah, well, he said it, charismatic. And that's all he said. He goes, "I got one word for you, charismatic." And he hung up.
Right.
Guy was laughing at me all the way to the bank. He just scored on it, and that was before there was online betting. I don't know if he went to Caliente or he had a bookie or whatever.
Well, online betting is also killing the racetrack.
Yeah, true enough.
But I think something that's missing in society, a lot of our podcast listeners, a lot of young millennials, is the culture. I was listening to you the other night, and you were talking about Rob Reiner, that the horse track kept guys a lot longer they would have otherwise, just because of the culture and what racing does.
Yeah, it was that, when Rob Reiner died, but it was Mel Brooks that who goes to the racetrack all the time, and he was married to a very successful actress, and when she died, that was the love of his life. And when she died, he got very depressed, and the only way he was able to get through it is go to the racetrack every day with his buddies and take his mind off it. And so it's helped a lot of people in the past deal with, horrible situations. When you go to the racetrack, you can't, these tracks are so big and so beautiful, you really can't even see anything else. You don't even know there's an outside world going on. Like Santa Anita is one of the most beautiful, spectacular views in the world.
Right.
And that culture is not there anymore. The kids didn't learn to go to the racetrack and hang out. And consequently, you can talk to some of these younger kids and they can't tell you a story or, a joke because everything's so politically correct nowadays. And maybe it's just, bitter old me, but those stories, and the characters you find at the racetrack, they're gone, and they're not coming back either.
Right. Another question on my sheet. Doesn't it kind of bug you the way it's become a trendy hangout thing? Let's all go to the racetrack because there's a concert on Saturday night.
Right. Last time I went to the racetrack before COVID, there was about 200 or 300 kids in the stands, right, in the grandstand area. I'm in the box area. And I said to Joe, one of the ushers, known out there forever, I said, what is this? And he says, oh, it's a fraternity. The fraternity parties are coming out there now, and they're hosting them at the racetrack. And I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
And I think that's the perfect place to have a fraternity or a sorority party. It's open. There's something to do. It's not ultimately that expensive if you don't gamble. And I think it's a great idea. But there's got to be a change in the way people think about the racetrack, and the news putting on the dead horse stories every night. Not really helping.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you make it down to Del Mar?
I do, yeah. I don't. The problem with Del Mar is, I got to work Monday through Friday.
Right.
And the traffic, I went down last summer to Del Mar, and it took me 4 hours and 48 minutes to get there.
Easy.
Yeah,
I mean,
can
that's
see
the
that.
train.
Not worth it. I left like at 11 o'clock, and I got there in the 7th race.
Oh my God. Yeah.
But Del Mar is one of the most spectacular racetracks in the entire world, and opening day on Del Mar is one of the great days for people watching, but one of the great days in anybody who's into horse racing. It's just full of energy. They got tons of people there. There's a lot of money in San Diego too. People don't know this, but La Jolla and Del Mar and that Rancho, whatever that's
Rancho
called.
Santa Fe.
Rancho Santa
Rancho
Fe.
Santa Fe, yeah, right, exactly. Tons and tons of money down there.
Yeah, you got half of the San Diego Padres live there, about
Oh,
a
is that
third
right?
of the San Diego Chargers. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely loaded over there. Yeah, good racetrack, a lot of history there. I remember as a kid going to the Del Mar Fair, and
Oh yeah.
my dad pointed out, he goes, okay, now that house over there, that's Jimmy Durante's house. That house up there on the bluff, that's Desi Arnaz's house. And I walking through the fairgrounds, and there's truly Jimmy Durante just standing there. And
Wow. Wow.
one day I went to the races, and I'm walking up to the gate with Jack Klugman.
Is that right?
Oh yeah. He's just walking up, and
Big
I
fan.
just looked, said hello, and he went on his way. But there's a guy that fit in at the racetrack though.
Oh yeah.
He
Klugman.
was right.
Klugman, and also what's his name from 8 is Enough, the dad on 8 is Enough.
Van Patten.
Dan Patton, yeah, Dick Van
Yeah.
Patten.
Yeah.
Dick
Yeah,
Van
that whole
Patten.
family, those guys are card players too.
Yeah, the whole family, gambles, and consequently lives on like Sepulveda and Kester or something.
Oh, no kidding.
No, but no, I don't know where they live. But they're really, the kids are awfully nice. Dick Van Patten raised some really cool kids.
Yeah. Poker guy? Are you a poker guy, or do you just?
No, I'm not, because I'm not that bright. So when you play poker, you got to really know like tells and remember what the other person had and what he'll bluff on and stuff like that. And I'm just not that good at it.
Yeah.
I have a short attention span, and it just doesn't do it for me. I don't mind playing. We played a couple of times online with Poker Stars, and then we had Zoom on as well, and so that's cool because you can see the guys that you're playing with, and and play poker. It's kind of cool.
Right. Yeah, I have a son-in-law that's big into poker, and the other day he called me. We were on the phone just catching up, and he says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I had a poker game with my dad and my brother, my sister, and somebody else. Next time I'll invite you." We ended up playing for about 5 hours. And I thought, good God, don't call me. I do not have 5 hours to sit on Zoom and play cards. I really
5
don't.
hours. Yeah,
I got a question for you guys,
yeah,
right?
sure.
Because poker is a game of skill, and sports betting's been legalized because it's skill, right? Because there's no way, Tim, and I've been listening to you forever, there's no way you'd be going to the racetracks for so many years. And the same thing with Raider Jim, right? And Raider Jim's success at the horse track has translated to sports betting.
Right.
I'm glued to whatever Raider Jim said. So what are some tips, and maybe we could do another podcast, maybe you guys can teach me how to bet on horses, man. What's the skill involved when you're betting and you're wagering on a horse?
To be honest with you, I have no fucking idea.
That's it.
I really don't. I mean, I listen to a couple of guys like Ted Ziegenbusch, who used to be on Coast 103.5,
Right.
Disc jockey. He did the love songs on the coast. but he's a great handicapper.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I take tips from him, but I don't ever pretend to be like a handicapper, or I just take tips from people. You know, once in a while you look at a horse and you get a feel that, you know, that horse is dancing around a little. He's not sweating. You know, his ass isn't foaming. And there's a couple of things like that. But you know what? Those tips are all crap anyway, because, you know, a horse is dancing around. He's not sweating. He's not foaming. Boom. Last. Right? Nobody knows. I mean, you know, Chris McCarron is one of my dad's good friends. And Chris McCarron, you know, would occasionally say to my dad, "Hey, I really like my horse today." He'd come in 8th, right? Chris McCarron was the jockey. He was the guy on the horse, steering that horse and operating that horse, says to my dad he likes that horse, and comes in 8th. Not 2nd, not 3rd, 8th.
So
Those guys don't even know.
And your dad's not just another guy. He's Tim Conway, man.
Right?
Burnett Show. He kills it.
How was his skill at the track?
Right.
How was your dad's skill at the track? He was good, huh?
My dad actually did have handicapping skills. I mean,
I kind of thought so.
He would read the form, and he had, like, you know, 14
The
different
tip sheet. English is my second language. It always comes out. But the tip sheet, is that any good? Is it?
You know, the one that used to be in the green sheet that used to be in the Daily News was pretty good.
Yeah.
But and the one, you know, they just take it out of the racing form and use that, and I think it's pretty good. You know, I like it. And some of those guys are good, like that Baedeker. I mean, that Baedeker had a perfect card opening day at Hollywood Park, I think back in the 1950s, 54 or something like that. I mean, he had a perfect card. He called all 9 races,
Jesus.
winner, place, and show, I believe. I believe he had, you know, the first 3 horses in every single race.
Holy cow.
Wow.
I mean, that'll never happen again. The odds of that are like the odds of having a perfect, March Madness.
Right.
You know, the perfect bracket.
Now, I'm a little older than you, so I'm pretty sure I already know the answer to this question. Did you ever make it to Agua Caliente down the other side of the border?
Oh, yeah. I'm calling it.
Okay.
We went, it's great because that's real horse racing. I mean, that's,
correct.
You know, guys that down there, they're not playing, they're gambling, right?
Right.
Like you and I play, you know, you play at the racetrack, you play in Vegas, you play with sports, but you're not gambling. I mean, you're not putting the house on the line. Right. But those guys are, and they were gambling. I love that. I love that aspect to it. I also remember watching Highlight. Remember what the Highlight?
I was just going to say, and when the horse races end, you go over to the Highlight Palace.
That's right.
In Revolucion.
That's right. And I remember coming back from Mexico and, you know, driving through Tijuana, and I got pulled over by a cop because I was going the wrong way on a one-way street. And the cop pulls me over, and he's talking to me in, like, sort of broken English. And he's asking me, you know, "Hey, you know, we can make this all go away for $100. And I had no money on me at all, absolutely not a dime. And I go to see if maybe I have change in the, you know.
What? You're a white guy? You don't have any money in your pocket? Come on, man.
I know. I was in college at the time, so I go into the car to see if I have change in the, you know, the glove compartment or something. Right. And I see his partner is in my car trying to take the car radio out.
Nice.
What a world.
We had a family friend when we were growing up, and the gentleman was postman, mailman.
Okay.
But they lived on a hill in the neighborhood, one of the nicest houses at the time in the neighborhood. Come to find out, they had the nicest house like that because he had hit the 510 twice.
No.
Now, Josh, the 510 was akin to Tim's story of hitting the pick 6, but this guy won it twice. And like in a short amount of time, he'd won it like twice in 6 months or something.
Wow.
And what made it nice is he was a very, very nice, generous, good man. You never knew he was a horse guy. Just one day I started talking to him about it. And I said, "I understand you won the 510. And he's like, "Yeah." And he's just very low key. And then he just sat there and explained to me what he looks at, what he picked. Same guy though, green sheet and racing form. That was him.
Well, do you remember in New York, they used to have the daily number, right? It was three
the numbers racket.
Yeah, right. And do you know where that number came from? It was the last three numbers of the handle at Belmont.
Oh,
Really?
Yeah, that's where the number came from. So talk about, having the ability to, fudge that one.
Yeah, right.
Guy works at the racetrack, and he goes, "Hey, what's the handle today?" He goes, "Oh, what do you got?" 328. 328. There's a lot of that going on now.
and that's great. And I don't get it, but I've been hearing something peripherally about you bet something, right? And maybe you guys can allude to this because they say that's part of the problem in horse racing. Where you bet something, you win, and you get to the window, especially veterans like you guys, and what you're getting back was not necessarily what you expect.
Well, I mean, it used to be, right, that the payouts used to be tremendous, and they still are on big days, like, Churchill Downs on Kentucky Derby or Belmont or Preakness. And, you can exact and it can pay like a phone book. Like the last Kentucky Derby, I had the 7-horse on top, and we won, right? So I went to show my dad, because my dad was in pretty bad shape. And I said, "Dad, look at this. I was watching with him. I said, I got the ticket. I have the 7. I have, 50 across on the 7. Inquiry. First time ever a horse was taken down. I have the ticket to show, too. I can prove it to you. I still have the ticket.
Now that's the story too that you should lead in with when people ask what kind of a horse player are you. That really exemplifies your luck, right?
I mean, that's how shitty my luck is that I can't even remember the crappiest story.
And was it Thompson on your show that had the story about his race ticket? Just one of your guys had a story, and it was like an amazing story. It was same type of thing, or maybe his was a parlay ticket.
No, Mark tells a great story. He used to be a real big online gambler.
Yeah.
And you know what it's like when you call in a bet, they say, "What's your number?" And you say, 438. Okay, 438, who do you want? I'll take the Redskins. And then they repeat the bet back to you to make sure they got the right bet. And he goes, "Okay, have a nice day, 438. But they never use names, right? In case anyone's listening to it, they never really use names. So this is what a degenerate is. He calls up on Christmas morning to make a bet on the Cowboys on the early game. And the guy picks up and goes, "How can I help you?" He goes, "It's 438. He goes, "Oh, Merry Christmas, 438. That's great.
So I like that.
Merry Christmas, and Merry Christmas to all the other 438ers around the house.
Did you take your daughter to the track?
Yeah, I took her to the track. She loved it for a while, and then she sort of grew up and realized there were no kids there her age, and that was over.
Yeah.
But I grew up, around the racetrack, and I remember I have a videotape of her somewhere around the house where she was like 4 years old, going, "Come on with this 3. Come on with this 3. Come on with this 3." It's like her first words she ever said. "Come on with this 3."
Los Al, do you ever get down to Los Al?
I do. I love Los Al. Los Al is like
that's a classic track.
Oh, it's a really old classic, track that's been beat up a little, but I like that. I really like that.
Yeah, when you go down into when they're putting the jockeys up, and you can get so close down there, and you can just stand. Oh, that's real horse racing right there. It's good stuff.
Yes, and I love the fact that. Well, I don't know what it's like now because I haven't been there in about a year or so. But I love, and if people who own or run Los Al are going to think I'm bullshitting them here, I love the fact that every single box has their own TV set.
Nice.
Right?
Yeah.
And every one of those TV sets is broken.
That's
every one of them.
There's
not a single one that works, and I love that. I love just the attitude of, you know what, fuck it. It is what it is. It doesn't work. We're not replacing it.
No, I've never been to the Morongo room. Does Morongo have a good horse room?
I don't know. I know that, I don't know. I really don't know. When I go to Morongo, I usually just play the video poker or the tables. They got a great pool, though.
Do they?
And they got 65,000 square feet of new casino. plus 800 slot machines, 3 new bars, and 2 new restaurants. All the rooms have been renovated. And they're really into hand sanitizer. They take your temperature when you get in. And, I'm sorry, that was a live read.
Tim, man, since you're a luminary.
I hope they get to stay open because I have a brother-in-law who he was one of the head banquet guys and has not been able to return yet.
Where, at Morongo?
At Morongo, yeah. He used to do he was the guy that was in charge of the Brunch with the Beatles that the rock station does.
Oh, okay. I'll tell you a quick story about that. They used to call it Breakfast with the Beatles, and it was a morning show on our station over there, KLSX. And a very nice lady, a young lady named Deidre O'Donoghue was the host of that show. And I'd run into her occasionally during the week. She was very, very nice, very young. She was probably about, I don't know, 35 or 36. And she would get there an hour before her show, and she would do 9 a.m. to noon every Sunday, and she'd play Beatles music. Well, she wasn't there at 8:30, and the show started at 9, and she wasn't there. And they called her cell phone, and she didn't answer. So somebody went to her apartment, got like a welfare check, and she was dead in her living room.
Wow.
And just out. So Jack Silver was the program director,
right.
Was really distraught, and because he really liked her, and she was just a great employee, she had great stories, loved the Beatles. Before her shift was over, right before noon, Jack Silver, the program director, got 3 calls saying, "Hey, I'm sorry that happened to Deidre. I'm a big Beatles fan, and I got my own records. Maybe I could slide in there temporarily and take over for her." Isn't that disgusting?
Wow, no kidding.
People. Yeah. Before that shift was over, like, wow, she's gone. How about me?
Unbelievable. Oh, now, a luminary as yourself, right? Hollywood royalty, the experience you've had on your show. You're one of the few guys who can figure this out for us, and Raider Jim's the same way. What do you guys think? Like sports betting, right? I'm betting it's going to be in California legalized in 2021. But how are the Indian guys? How are the assemblymen? And how are the racetrack guys that you guys know going to be able to get along and come up with a system that'll work and everybody makes money?
I don't know how they're gonna work it, but they've got to do it soon because people are gambling online. That money is going away anyway.
Right.
So why not, tax it and have a new revenue stream? Because this state, I don't know if you guys know,
right.
They're broke.
Right.
They are $54 billion in the hole. And now they're going to start cutting school programming.
Right.
And so they're going to look for money anywhere they can. And I'll bet you sports gambling is a piece of it too. I'll bet you within 12 months, it's available everywhere.
Yeah, Assembly 21 guy is saying $500 million in tax revenue for California. But you look at New Jersey, they had, $1 billion handle before college basketball?
Wow.
And together with the 22 states that legalized in Vegas, it was up to $2.5 billion handle.
Well, look, I mean, I can't watch a baseball game other than, the Dodgers without having money on it. I mean,
right.
I'm not going to sit there and watch, the A's play, the Cardinals. I mean, who gives a shit, right?
Right.
But if I had money on the game, I'm watching it.
Right.
It works for everybody. It's great for ratings.
Right.
No, we got a whole page dedicated with our guy who's obsessed with baseball.
Right.
He breaks down every single team, but from a betting angle. Nobody else is doing that. Teams that are lousy bullpen, that you can do some in-game betting and get a good number and win. And he said take the Dodgers over 37 because we were listening to your show the other day.
Oh, is that right? Yeah,
Yes.
I like that. I like that number too. I like over 37. They can get on a hot streak and win 20 in a row.
Right. They were 40 and 19 last year. With They got a really deep pitching staff.
They have great pitching, and these guys, pitching is going to dominate now because, the guys who are going to get up there and try to hit these balls, they've been on the bench for 6 months, and most of them have just been partying or just staying at home and probably not out there, taking live pitches. I think there's going to be a ton of shutouts, maybe even some perfect games. But I love that number, that 37. I love the over on that.
Yeah. Over, under, overall season betting like that, how do you think personally, not the whole industry, but from you personally, how do you feel about betting the games when it's the reduced season, different in personnel, different rules, things like that?
I don't like betting the over-under on a season because again, I have a rather short attention span.
Yeah.
And so in horse racing, the horse race is usually a minute or two, right?
Right.
Maybe 3 at the most on the mile and a half. But if you're going to bet the over on a season, you got to wait 3 months to get paid. And you just to double your money? Get out of here.
Yeah.
It's just too long. Way too long.
It's like as soon as the Super Bowl's over, they're already giving you the futures for the next year on who's going to win the Super Bowl, who's going to win the AFC.
I love the futures, and I think people almost, cleaned up and really took a huge bite out of Vegas. If those Vegas Knights would have won the Stanley Cup in their career season, wow, they came within 3 games of doing it.
It was a year ago.
It was a 4-1 series final. It was Washington, Vegas 4-1.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't bet hockey because this guy Bernard Wolfman, independently wealthy Jewish lawyer and mentor of mine, and we bet every sport. But he's like, Josh, if you bet hockey, you're a degenerate. So don't bet hockey. That's why I never bet hockey. Yeah,
I mean there's some money to be made in hockey because every single home team is usually a point or a point and a half favorite, even on really shitty teams. Right. And so you can make some money on a hot road team coming in, and all of a sudden they're the underdog.
It seems like you have.
Couple bucks. I could watch the Bruins play, the Rangers, or two teams play that I've never seen before because I love the game of hockey. But it's going to be so great once betting is legalized. And I'm really surprised that it's not yet. I know it is a few states, right? New Jersey, you said?
22 states.
22?
22 states have legalized sports betting, and about another 20 is going through the state legislature. California is one of the ones that are lagging behind. But, hey, $500 million, and I think that's a low figure for as far as the taxing is concerned.
I think it's low by tenfold.
Yeah, and you got to do it right. 21 out of 22 states have done it right. You have to not have a mandated minus 120. You got to we got to get these liberals, man. No, let me stop my rant. But they got to get off our taxes. Only tax at 10%, and you have to allow people, like they do now, to the losses be able to deduct it off your personal income.
Wait a minute, they're taking a dime for taxes?
I forgot what liberal Bernie Sanders state it was, but it was somebody like Massachusetts.
What are they currently taxing it right now?
Right now, gambling winnings are at the same thing as the capital gains tax, 25%, right? But you can deduct your losses from your winnings.
Sure.
So you can pay less tax.
Right.
Now, one state saying, no, you can't do that. So we got to watch these guys in California.
Well, if whatever state's not allowing it, people will just go online and bet in another state. They're not gonna pay.
They're close to Foxwood up there, so they'll just cross actually, that's probably what Cuomo was talking about: people crossing state lines to get a better number. Because they have a sports betting bill that's going through the state of New York as well.
Josh, you're a numbers guy, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm going to show you something here. Let's say this is going to kill horse racing. Can you see that number? 10 million, right? Is that reversed?
No, I can see it good. No, okay. It looks good.
That's $10 million, right? And they take 24.5% out for trifectas. Now, this number is conceivable on Kentucky Derby Saturday.
Right.
For that amount of money to be bet on trifectas in the first race. That's very, very possible. So if you multiply it by 0.745. So that would essentially be a 24.5% takeout, or 25.5%, right? It's around that. It's very close. And then, so that equals 7,450,000. So $10 million went into trifectas, and the track paid out 7,450,000. They made 2.5 million on one race. Now, if you do this over the 12 races of the day, right? Everyone puts their money back in. So that's one race, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. After 12 races, $292,000 goes back to the players. The track has the rest.
Jeez.
That's one of the problems.
Wow.
Is the money they take out.
Right.
Imagine
Big
the money that Breeders' Cup weekend. What are the dollars? Do you got that one? You are better than math than you want to claim.
Yeah, but Breeders' Cup is about the same.
Yeah.
There are some pick fours that have short, takes on them. There's a 14%, but most people don't know that. Most people aren't into, how much they take out of the, how much they take out every day. But it's too much.
Right.
It's running horse racing into other states where they don't take as much.
What drove the state to pull the plug on simulcast betting at Santa Anita on the 1st of July?
You were able to bet.
No, they shut it down. There was a matter of fact, because I was writing up the rest of the notes yesterday, and there was a thing on the news. I could have sworn what it read was, state of California has said that until further notice, simulcast betting Santa Anita closed.
And when did that happen?
Yesterday, July 1st.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Because it literally, they would have to have, I went there the other day. I went there on Sunday, and there were literally 9 guys there.
Oh, okay. So that's what drove it.
So
Okay.
the problem was, to bring in security, turn the lights on, have the tellers there. There's 9 people. And so they just shut it down because they weren't making any money.
Got it. Okay.
Plus, they're not selling any food or any drinks because the county won't let them do it. So it's just literally it's 9 guys in the dungeon, all coughing and getting kicked out because they're all COVID.
They all got underlying conditions, right?
Oh yeah, they're all a mess.
Jesus.
That's what trackers are. A mess.
So any of the horse guys and how they're actually, on the inside, how are they actually reacting and responding to the whole COVID thing? Is it just like a shit show like it is for the rest of us, or?
They're pretty cool guys. I know Doug O'Neill, who's a great trainer, and they're losing a little business, but they'll move their horses around. They're now at Los Al, where they run 2 cards a day, which is pretty cool. They run the thoroughbreds during the day and then run the shorters at night. But it's tough on everybody. There are. I think it was Bob Costas that said this pretty early on. He said there's only 2 types of people in the United States right now: people that have to rearrange their schedule because of COVID, and people who are fighting to stay alive. Psychologically, physically, financially. And if you're in the former group where you just have to rearrange your schedule, you should really shut the hell up because there's a lot of people really hurting right now.
Right.
And if you notice that all the people that say we have to stay at home to beat this thing, they all have jobs. There's not, one single unemployed guy telling you to stay home. Everyone's working and saying, hey, I got a job, but you better stay home.
Insanity.
It's crazy, Jim and Josh. I tell you, it's crazy.
Well, I will tell you, I'm looking at my clock. I told you I keep one eye on my notes, one eye on the clock. I cannot thank you enough for the time you've given us. To all the listeners out there to the ESBC podcast, once again, our special guest, we're so proud to have him.
Thank you very much.
We're real close to inking him to a return appearance. He is the franchise tag player for KFI Radio, AM 640. He is the top guy on the roster. Tim Conway Jr., thank you so much for everything. I'm going to reach out to you before Monday. I'm going to shoot you some of the opening races for Del Mar. I'm going to do a podcast for Josh next week. Need some Tim Conway picks when we do these.
Yeah, what I need is some picks in the NBA and baseball.
Well,
We got you, man. All right, I know you guys want me to wear this mask. I'm sorry I didn't during the podcast.
Yeah, because of all these shysters out there and what you just said about Costas, one of the main things is I do not want another Raider Jim, anybody to get ripped off. We want them to have a methodology to be able to pick their own games. And if they can't, we're going to have a live spreadsheet on Twitter where people can follow our picks.
Oh, that's great.
Right? Because all these I'm 20-0. Well, let me see you being 20-0. Let's be transparent.
Right. Is this the same Raider Jim from years ago?
Yeah, probably.
Wow. Quite a reputation. Fellas, nice to meet both of you. I'm glad to have done this, and I will never do it again.
You're too generous. Thank you very much. And I would be remiss if I
ding-dong with you.
Ding-dong with you is how I was going to end it. I will be listening tonight. Again, thank you very much. We hope you'll join us again.
All right, and send me the link. We'll promote it on KFI.
Thank you so much.
I'm just
right on. We always close with Winston Churchill. In the line of podcast,
fellas.
Winston Churchill, we make a living from our labor, but we make a life from what we give. Thank you for listening to the ESBC Betting and Financial Network.